Euromaxx highlights. Coming up on the show, Swinging Sixties, London's National Portrait Gallery spotlights 60s pop musicians. Top talent, Cellist Sol Gabetta is awarded a second Echo Classic. French wine, a French vintner produces top wines in Russia. Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Robin Merrill.
And a very warm welcome from Berlin. We begin with this little gem, the Lomo automatic camera, first produced in Russia back in the 1980s. It's meanwhile become a cult amongst amateur photographers. It's all about snapshot photography, spontaneous pictures, and weird and wonderful results like with this camera, which has, can you believe it, 9 lenses. To celebrate 25 years of what's called lomography, we've been investigating what all the fuss is about.
A tilt, atypical, and above all, a bit imperfect. These Lomo snapshots buck convention when it comes to photography. With blurry shapes, cropped-out faces, or odd subject matter, these photos embrace an original aesthetic and a new and original reality. Joachim Trapp discovered the small, handy camera from Russia at a Vienna flea market in the 1990s. Since then, he's been a passionate lomographer. Lomographers don't need a viewfinder for their snapshots. The process is simple. Just point and shoot. Photos are taken at random, in passing, and therein lies the secret to lomography's charm.
The great thing about lomography is that it's very spontaneous and just kind of happens. It's not the kind of photography that's always pushing itself to the fore. You can just go about your life, experience beautiful things, and then take a photograph by the by, and you capture the atmosphere wonderfully that way.
After the fall of the Iron Curtain, students from Vienna discovered the camera at a Prague flea market in 1991. They recognized its potential and persuaded the original Lomo optic factory not to shut down production of the camera as originally planned. Meanwhile, they started to build a global network.
There are lomography embassies all over the world. There are competitions and parties around the world. And it's a fact that whether you're in Tokyo or in Beijing, or even at the Lomographic World Congress, you immediately sense that it's connecting everyone.
For the first World Congress in Madrid in 1997, Joachim built his first Lomo wall. The work consisted of hundreds of snapshots artfully arranged. Johnny Depp found his way onto the wall. So did German actor Horst Tappert with an ice cream cone. It's a time-consuming yet creative hobby. The only requirements for beautiful images are patience and experience and what's known as the golden rule.
I think it's most important to be quick, and you don't necessarily have to know what's in the picture, even afterward. A lomographer needs to get up close and personal with the object of their desire, and you don't want to overthink things.
The Lomo factory in Russia closed down 4 years ago. To mark Lomo's 25th anniversary, a new model is being produced in Austria, a mini version of the Diana.
The special thing about the Diana is that you can use 35mm film, but if you select the 24:17 setting, then the image is virtually split. So you have a divider, and you can take 72 photos instead of half that amount.
Regardless of the camera, the result is always a surprise. Countless new and never-before-seen impressions, perspectives, and colors. From city skylines to street art and everything in between.
Johanna Maier is one of the world's top chefs in what is still a male-dominated profession. But unlike other big names who do TV shows and have chains of restaurants, she still dreams up her creations in her family restaurant tucked away in the Austrian countryside. And even so, her talent hasn't gone unnoticed by the gourmet guides, with Gomio and Michelin both singing her praises.
Johanna Maier's life looks idyllic.
I think the good Lord gives everyone a vocation, and mine is cooking.
Thanks to Johanna, the hotel restaurant Hubertus in the Austrian resort of Filzmoos is a popular haunt for gourmets.
Sehr gutes. Es gibt Köche.
Some chefs like to delegate so they can concentrate on new things. But I'm in the kitchen every day. I get there at 9 in the morning and meet my cooks. Then I start cooking, and that's how I hone my skills.
A whitefish carpaccio with herbs. Johanna's dishes are sheer poetry. The chef works with a team of 10, including her son, Dietmar. He's done most of his training abroad, but he's come home to finish it off.
Basically, we want the best for our guests, so that means we always get the same result.
Lovely food.
The starred chef spends years perfecting recipes before introducing them to the restaurant. She's just published her third cookbook called Himmlisch Gut, which means heavenly. The recipes are divided into seasons.
Often, cookbooks by outstanding chefs are full of amazing pictures. But then you actually read the recipes and soon realize that you won't be able to follow them if you're an amateur cook. So I made a huge effort to make sure that the recipes in my cookbook are doable, healthy, and taste good. And will make people happy.
Johanna Maier's cuisine is light, creative, and exquisitely presented. Along with cooking, her passion is her family. Her 3 sons all work for her. While her husband Dietmar is in charge of service and running the hotel, her realm is the kitchen.
Exactly 25 years. It's a bit of an anniversary.
Johanna Maier has enjoyed storybook success. She grew up in poverty, but married Dietmar Maier, the son of a hotel owner, after completing her training as a cook and waitress. They married in 1971, and she began working in the family hotel as a chambermaid. In 1984, she branched out into the kitchen. She's raised 4 children and has passed her love of fine food on to all of them.
I think if my sons weren't here, then I would probably stop doing this. But since I'm here with my sons and my daughter and of course my husband, at my age it's worth continuing, because there are so many wonderful people helping me.
Johanna Maier's restaurant is known far and wide. She's the only female chef to have been awarded 4 toques by Gomio. And since 2005, she boasts 2 Michelin stars. Once a week, Johanna gives cookery classes. Participants pay €220 for the privilege and get to savor the results. The students tend to be international, and the courses are always booked out far in advance. The participants invariably go home happy.
It's really incredible how spending 4 or 5 hours together can turn people into a family. Cooking is very bonding.
The 1960s was a very creative decade in the history of popular music, especially in Britain. There's a photographic retrospective just opened at the National Portrait Gallery in London showing some of the top names in the business as they were back then. And unknown bands like these 4 guys from Liverpool behind me.
British bands put the swing into the 60s. With its elan and energy, British beat and joie de vivre conquered the world.
It was a very optimistic and creative time, and everybody inspired everybody else. I mean, because you could make money out of being a pop band. Everybody wanted to be one. I think in Liverpool there were 500 pop groups all trying to make a living, and the best ones succeeded, of course.
The book and exhibition at Britain's National Portrait Gallery show how the music influenced society. It features some 150 portraits of pop and rock musicians of the 1960s, including David Bowie, the Rolling Stones, The Who, Pink Floyd, and a young Cliff Richard.
Because of the huge interest in pop, hundreds of magazines set up just to document the interest. The Beatles had their own magazine. Lots of new pop magazines were launched, and so there was lots of work for photographers who had access to pop stars and who were able to photograph them.
One of the era's most famous photographers was Philip Townsend. He could always be seen on London's Carnaby Street, the city's premier catwalk for music and fashion. Townsend worked for the Daily Express, as well as the high society magazine Tatler and the German magazine Constanze. Now 70 years old, this is his studio in southwest London. It's packed full with photos documenting the swinging 60s. Back in 1963, when he was 24 years old, Townsend photographed a teenage band which was still totally unknown at the time.
They took off very quickly, the Rolling Stones. One minute they were the Rolling Who's, and the next minute they were the biggest rock band in Europe. The first session was the ones in Chelsea, of which that is one of them, which was used when they went to Decca to get a recording contract to show what they looked like photograph, which was good that they liked them, considering that it was the very first pictures.
The photo went on to make music history and is now in the exhibition. Other photographers followed Townsend's lead and began shooting outside. The more unconventional the location, the better.
The album cover was such an important thing, and so a good photograph of a group on the cover, imaginatively photographed, would make the record sell in huge quantities. So it was very important to get the best photographers available to come up with imaginative ideas.
The photographs made young musicians into icons, and the photographers featured in this show became famous with them.
Yes. I did become a famous Londoner because there weren't very many of us, and if you sort of felt inclined to be around, you would be around.
The 60s were fashionable, loud and colourful, breaking with taboos and establishing newly found freedom. A decade that's remembered for its trend-setting developments, and one that still evokes great interest to this day.
Certainly does. To Russia now for some fine wines which might surprise you a bit. An enterprising French vintner discovered that the Black Sea region around Krasnodar has a similar climate and landscape to Bordeaux in France. So 6 years ago, Franck Duseigneur planted vines, and after much tender loving care, the fruits of his labours are gaining something of a reputation.
The grapes grow beside the big tree that the Russians call the King's Oak, and Frenchman Franck Duseigneur named one of his wines after it. The grapes ripen at an altitude of 300 meters, not far from the Black Sea. Perfect conditions for fine wines. Franck Duseigneur tests this year's harvest. The grapes are deep red and juicy. Acidity, sugar content and tannins are beautifully balanced. Franck is pleased. This will be a well-rounded vintage.
We're lucky here, firstly because of the conducive climate created by the Black Sea. The climate here is moderate. And second, because of the altitude, which lets the grapes ripen slowly. That's what produces the typical fine, delicate flavor of our wines.
Wine growing has a long tradition in Russia's Black Sea region. It flourished under the Tsars, and Franck Duseigneur wants to continue that tradition with his chateau. He learned his craft in Bordeaux and the Rhone Valley, and now he's brought his knowledge to the Black Sea region. He wants to revive the wine-growing culture that was lost under the Soviet regime. His goal is to create Russian wines with a French soul. In Russia, he's free from the strict rules of the French school of wine growing and can compose completely new wines.
Dans le haut de gamme, le chêne royal.
In the premium segment, for example, the Chêne Royal, we blend in more and more Krasnostop. This is a native grape variety that was introduced by the Cossacks. It's very full-bodied, very dark, and after it ages in the barrel, you get a velvety wine full of bouquet.
Desineur hopes these wines will induce wine lovers to come and visit this picturesque but sleepy region in southern Russia. He wants Chateau Le Grand Vostok, the Great East, to become a travel destination with its own restaurant and hotel. Many Russians have already become curious.
We've heard a lot about these wines. Now we can also sample them. Outstanding, much better than other Russian wines.
Perhaps it will create a new culture of drinking here, one which won't hurt the Russian nation so much. After all, a glass of wine is good for your health.
In Russia, demand is growing for wines from the south of the country, including those from Le Grand Vostok. And who knows, maybe the Black Sea region will soon gain a name for wine equal to France's Bordeaux.
The Echo Awards here in Germany are some of the most prestigious in classical music. And the cellist Sol Gabetta has just received her second one. 2 years ago, she won the award for Best Instrumentalist. This year, it's for Best Concert Recording. We met up with her at her home in the Swiss countryside, but first, let's experience her live in concert here in Berlin.
Sol Gabetta is 28 years old and currently considered to be one of the world's greatest cellists. Sol Gabetta is her stage name. Sol means sun, and she seems to have a natural radiance.
I love my life.
I love my life because I'm free. I can do through music what I love. What more could I want than to communicate in my very own language?
Sol Gabetta has recorded 5 CDs. She already received an Echo Award for classical music for her debut album in 2007. Now, for a Shostakovich concert, she's being honored with it again. Home for the cellist is now in the Swiss Alps near Basel. Sol Gabetta decided to settle in a tranquil place in the countryside, even though she's rarely home. Most of the time she's on tour, playing all over the world.
If I can't get good connections to Basel, then I can get them to Zurich. That's the brilliant thing about Switzerland. Everything's so small and within reach.
Sol Gabetta was born in Argentina. Her mother is Russian, her father French. She has 3 brothers and sisters. Early on, her parents organized cello instruction for her. Every 2 weeks, they'd make the 400-kilometer trip from her hometown of Cordoba to Buenos Aires for lessons.
They gave me the opportunity, I think, simply to take this path, this emotional path. And I think that's the greatest thing that my parents could do, to allow me the freedom to develop my own personality.
Sol Gabetta started playing the cello when she was 4.5 years old. She says she only chose the instrument because she wanted to play something bigger than her brother's violin.
This was my very first cello. I started playing this cello when I was 4.5, and it was so big that my feet came to right about here.
Mamá, puede comenzar.
Her parents quickly recognized her talent, and by the time she was 11, she was in Europe to continue her training.
I performed so many little concerts with it and had so many key moments. It was my first experience of performing in Argentina and on the cello as an instrument.
Here she shows a student that the cello has many voices.
Es sind zwei Menschen, die kommunizieren. Es ist nicht eine hübsche Melodie. Ja?
The Basel Music Academy is one of the places Sol Gabetta studied. Now she's a professor here. When she's back home, she spends a lot of her time with her instrument maker in Zurich. Together, they work on getting the most out of her marvelous cello, a Guadagnini, vintage 1759. Anyone who hears Sol Gabetta play or watches her perform will feel her irresistible energy, and that even includes the critics.
If you're interested, you'll find some of these reports and others from Euromaxx on YouTube. Just type in Deutsche Welle English and the choice is yours. That's it for now, though, so bye-bye.
Been making things by hand in her studio. It's precision work that takes patience.
Working on jewelry like this is really calming. Giving it a go is fun too, when women make jewelry for themselves at home. I think you could say that jewelry making is the new knitting. I think that's really nice.
Julia Neumann studied history and initially worked as a journalist. But when her first collection sold well, she turned her hobby into a job. And she's been successful. Each year she introduces 2 new collections. She uses top-quality materials for the necklaces, antique items and beads that she strings using an ancient knotting technique.
It's a special technique. I think that it's about 300 or 500 years old. It's a way to get the beads on a string and have them move with it. You have to make the knots close to the beads, otherwise you don't get that effect. And if you make a string of them, it looks like this.
39-year-old Julia Neumann makes only a limited number of each of her designs, and they're certainly eye-catchers, featuring pendants with symbols, engraved medallions, chains and bracelets.
Well, you should wear only one piece at a time. If it's a big piece, then opt for either a necklace or bracelet. I think it's important not to overdo it. But if you like to do that, then it should be done with lots and lots of small chains.
She uses a mix of materials for her collections: leather, lace, gold, silver and semi-precious stones. Customers pay between 100 and 300 euros for a piece.
Yes, they're nice-looking women. I always see that on the street. Sometimes I see a woman with a chain I've made, and I think, nice, I'd wear that.
And that can happen to Julia Neumann practically anywhere in the world now, because her jewellery is selling well around the globe.
If you're interested, you'll find some of these reports and others from Euromaxx on YouTube. Just type in Deutsche Welle English and the choice is yours. That's it for now, though, so bye-bye.